In the depths of space, a solitary ship drifted through the endless void. Its hull, once pristine and gleaming, now bore the scars of countless battles. Inside, a weary crew clung to the fragile hope that had sustained them through years of relentless warfare. Captain Lena Novak stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the view screen that displayed nothing but the blackness of space. She had seen too much death, too much destruction in this war against the Zorgans. The alien race, with their advanced technology and ruthless tactics, had pushed humanity to the brink of extinction. As she stared into the abyss, Lena's thoughts wandered to Earth, the once vibrant planet that now lay in ruins. The Zorgans had shown no mercy, obliterating cities and leaving billions dead in their wake. The survivors, scattered across the galaxy, clung to life in hidden colonies and makeshift shelters. But even in the face of such overwhelming odds, humanity refused to surrender. They fought back with a tenacity and resolve that surprised even the Zorgans. And now, after years of brutal conflict, there was a glimmer of hope. Lena's crew had intercepted a cryptic message, a whisper of a chance for peace. The Zorgans, it seemed, were ready to negotiate. But the price they demanded was high, a sacrifice that would test the limits of human endurance and moral courage. As the ship prepared to embark on this critical mission, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The Zorgans were not known for their mercy or their willingness to compromise. What if this was a trap? A ploy to lure the last remnants of humanity into a final devastating blow. She pushed aside her doubts and focused on the task at hand. The fate of her species rested on the outcome of these negotiations. Failure was not an option. Lena turned to her crew, a ragtag group of survivors who had become more than just colleagues. They were family. There was Grayson, the grizzled weapons expert who had lost his entire family to the Zorgans, and Ava, the brilliant young scientist whose innovative ideas had kept them alive against all odds. And then there was Zane, the enigmatic pilot with a past shrouded in mystery. Together, they had faced the horrors of war and emerged stronger, united by a bond that transcended the boundaries of race, gender, and background. They were the last hope of humanity, the guardians of a future that hung in the balance. As the ship hurtled through space, Lena couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. The Zorgans were an enigmatic species, their motives and intentions as alien as their appearance. What if this was a test of humanity's resolve, a crucible that would forge them into something greater, or break them entirely? The view screen suddenly flickered to life, revealing the looming presence of a Zorgan ship. Its angular, asymmetric design was a stark contrast to the sleek lines of human vessels. Lena felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the magnitude of the moment. This was it, the culmination of years of struggle and sacrifice. The price of peace, whatever it might be, would be paid in blood and tears. But for the sake of her crew, for the sake of the human race, Lena was ready to face whatever lay ahead. As the two ships drew closer, a sense of anticipation filled the bridge. The fate of humanity, the price of peace, would be decided in the next few hours. And Lena, captain of the last hope, would stop at nothing to ensure that the sacrifices of the past were not in vain. The Zorgan ship loomed larger on the view screen, its intentions still unknown. Lena took a deep breath, steeling herself for the challenge ahead. The price of peace was high, but the cost of failure was even higher. As the Zorgan ship loomed closer, Lena's heart raced with a mixture of anticipation and dread. She had faced countless battles, stared death in the face more times than she could count, but this moment felt different. The weight of the entire human race rested on her shoulders. The bridge was silent, save for the hum of the ship's engines and the occasional beep of the sensors. Lena's crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces etched with the same determination that she felt in her own heart. Suddenly, the communications panel lit up with an incoming transmission. Lena's stomach churned as she realized it was from the Zorgans. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves, and nodded to Ava to open the channel. The view screen flickered, and the image of a Zorgan filled the screen. Its angular features and shimmering, iridescent skin were both beautiful and unsettling. Lena had never seen a Zorgan up close before, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the alien being before her. Captain Novak, the Zorgon said, its voice a melodic whisper that sent shivers down Lena's spine. "We have been expecting you." Lena swallowed hard, trying to find her voice. "I am here to discuss the terms of peace," she said, her words sounding hollow even to her own ears. The Zorgon tilted its head, its eyes glittering with an unreadable emotion. "Peace," it repeated, as if tasting the word for the first time. "A curious concept, one that your species seems to struggle with." Lena bristled at the implied insult but kept her composure. "We have fought hard for our survival," she said, her voice steady. "But we are ready to end this war, to find a way to coexist." The Zorgon was silent for a moment, its gaze boring into Lena's soul. "And what price are you willing to pay for this peace?" it asked, its voice barely above a whisper. Lena felt a chill run down her spine. This was the question she had been dreading, the one that had haunted her dreams and waking moments alike. What would the Zorgons demand in exchange for peace? What sacrifice would be required of humanity? Before she could answer, the Zorgon spoke again. "You have fought valiantly, Captain Novak," it said, its voice almost sympathetic. "But you must understand that peace comes with a cost. Are you prepared to pay that price?" Lena's mind raced with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Would the Zorgons demand the surrender of Earth, the last stronghold of humanity? Would they require the sacrifice of her crew, the last hope of her species? She looked around the bridge, at the faces of the men and women who had become her family, Grayson with his gruff exterior and fierce loyalty, Ava with her brilliant mind and unshakable courage, Zane with his enigmatic past and unwavering dedication. They had been through so much together, had seen the very worst that the universe had to offer, and yet they had never given up, had never lost sight of the hope that had sustained them through the darkest of times. Lena turned back to the Zorgon, her resolve hardening. "We are prepared to discuss the terms of peace," she said, her voice steady and strong. "But we will not surrender our dignity, our humanity. We will not pay a price that goes against everything we stand for." The Zorgon regarded her for a long moment, its expression unreadable. Then slowly it nodded. "Very well, Captain Novak," it said, its voice tinged with something that might have been respect. "Let us begin the negotiations." The negotiations had been going on for hours, and Lena could feel the tension in the room reaching a breaking point. The Zorgons were relentless in their demands, each one more outrageous than the last. They wanted technology, resources, even the coordinates of the hidden human colonies scattered throughout the galaxy. Lena's crew was exhausted, their faces drawn and haggard. Grayson's hand never strayed far from his weapon, his eyes darting between the Zorgons and the view screen. Ava worked furiously at her console, trying to find some weakness in the Zorgons' defenses, some way to gain the upper hand. Zane sat silently, his expression unreadable, but Lena could see the tension in his shoulders. As the negotiations dragged on, Lena could feel her own resolve beginning to waver. The Zorgons were too powerful, too advanced. What chance did humanity have against a race that could travel the stars with such ease, that could destroy entire planets with a single weapon? But then, just as all seemed lost, Ava let out a cry of triumph. "Captain, I think I've found something," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. "A weakness in their shields, a way to even the odds." Lena felt a surge of hope, but it was quickly tempered by caution. The Zorgons were not to be underestimated, and any sign of weakness could be a trap. She needed to be sure, needed to know that this was not just another ploy. She turned to Zane, her eyes searching his face for any sign of deception. "Can we trust this information?" she asked, her voice low and urgent. "Is it real or just another trick?" Zane met her gaze, his expression solemn. "I believe it is real, Captain," he said, his voice steady. "But we must act quickly, before they realize what we have found." Lena nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. If Ava was right, if they could exploit this weakness, they might have a chance. But the risks were high, and the consequences of failure unthinkable. She turned back to the Zorgons, her expression resolute. "We have considered your demands," she said, her voice ringing with authority, and we have found them unacceptable. We will not surrender our technology, our resources, or our people. We will fight to the last breath, to the last ship, to defend what is ours." The Zorgans regarded her silently, their expressions unreadable. Then slowly they began to rise from their seats, their movements fluid and graceful. Lena's crew tensed, their hands moving to their weapons, ready for the fight they knew was coming. But before the Zorgans could make a move, Lena held up a hand. "Wait," she said, her voice calm and steady. "We have something you want, something that could change the course of this war. But we will only share it with you if you agree to our terms." The Zorgans paused, their interest piqued. "And what is this something?" they asked, their voices low and menacing. Lena glanced at Ava, who nodded slowly. "A way to even the odds," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A way to make this a fair fight." The Zorgans were silent for a long moment, their gazes boring into Lena's soul. She could feel the weight of their decision, the fate of the entire human race hanging in the balance. And then, just as the tension reached its breaking point, just as Lena thought she might scream from the pressure, the Zorgans spoke. "Very well, Captain Novak," they said, their voices cold and hard. "We will hear your terms, but be warned. If you try to deceive us, if this is some trick, you will pay with your lives." Lena nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. The stakes had never been higher, the risks never greater, but she knew that she had no choice, knew that this was the only way to save her crew, to save her species. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the battle ahead. The price of peace was high, but the cost of failure was even higher. As Lena prepared to reveal the weakness in the Zorgan defenses, a sudden commotion erupted on the bridge. The ship shuddered violently, throwing the crew off balance. Alarms blared, and the acrid smell of smoke filled the air. "Captain, we're under attack," Grayson shouted, his fingers flying across the weapons console. "The Zorgans, they've launched a full-scale assault." Lena's heart sank as she realized the depth of the Zorgans' treachery. The negotiations had been a ruse, a distraction to catch them off guard. And now, with their shields compromised and their weapon systems failing, they were sitting ducks. She turned to Ava, desperation etched on her face. "The weakness, can we still exploit it?" she asked, her voice strained. Ava shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know, Captain. The damage to our systems, it's extensive. I'm not sure if we can." Before she could finish her sentence, another explosion rocked the ship, sending sparks flying across the bridge. Lena gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles turning white. "Zane, get us out of here," she ordered, her voice rising above the chaos. "We need to retreat, regroup, and find another way." But as Zane punched in the coordinates for the nearest human outpost, a sickening realization dawned on Lena. The Zorgans had anticipated their every move, had planned for every contingency. And now, with their forces closing in from all sides, there was nowhere left to run. She closed her eyes, her mind racing with possibilities. They couldn't fight, couldn't flee, and couldn't negotiate. What options did they have left? And then, in a moment of startling clarity, Lena knew what she had to do. It was a gamble, a desperate play that could either save them all or doom them to oblivion. But it was the only choice she had. She turned to her crew, her eyes blazing with determination. "Listen to me, all of you," she said, her voice steady and strong. "We have one last chance, one final hope, but it will require a sacrifice, a price that I alone must pay." The crew stared at her, their expressions a mix of fear, confusion, and dawning comprehension. Grayson opened his mouth to protest, but Lena silenced him with a look. "Ava, I need you to prepare the escape pods," she said, her gaze unwavering. "Get the crew to safety, as far away from here as possible. Zane, set a course for the heart of the Zorgan fleet. And Grayson, thank you for everything." Grayson's eyes widened as he realized what Lena was planning. "Captain, no," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "You can't do this. We need you. The human race needs you." Lena smiled sadly, her hand resting on his shoulder. "The human race needs a future, Grayson," she said softly, "and this is the only way to give them one." She turned to the view screen, her gaze fixed on the looming Zorgan ships. "Ava, initiate the self-destruct sequence," she said, her voice calm and steady. "Set it for 5 minutes, and then get the hell out of here." Ava hesitated, tears streaming down her face. But then, with a nod of understanding, she began to work, her fingers flying across the console. Lena closed her eyes, her mind filled with images of Earth, of the hidden colonies, of the brave men and women who had fought and died for the chance to live in peace. And as the timer ticked down, as the Zorgan ships drew ever closer, she knew that she was making the right choice. She thought of her crew, of the bond they had forged through the fires of war, and she knew that they would carry on, that they would find a way to survive, to rebuild, to create a future worth fighting for. The ship shuddered as the Zorgan weapons found their mark, and Lena felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. The price of peace was high, but it was a price she was willing to pay. And as the timer reached 0, as the blinding light of the self-destruct sequence filled the bridge, Lena whispered a final prayer for the future of the human race. The blinding light of the self-destruct sequence engulfed the bridge, and for a moment, everything was still. Lena felt a sense of peace wash over her, a calm acceptance of her fate. She had made her choice, and she knew it was the right one. But then, in a twist of fate that defied all expectation, the light began to fade. The ship shuddered and groaned, but it did not explode. Lena opened her eyes, confusion and wonder etched on her face. "Captain, the self-destruct sequence, it's been aborted." Ava's voice rang out, tinged with disbelief and joy. "But how?" Lena turned to the view screen, her eyes widening as she saw the Zorgan ships retreating, their weapons falling silent. And then a face appeared on the screen, a face she had never expected to see again. "Zane," she whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion. "But how? I thought you were—" Zane smiled, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "I'm sorry, Captain," he said, his voice warm and reassuring. "I couldn't let you sacrifice yourself, not when there was another way." He held up a small device, its surface glowing with an eerie blue light. The weakness in the Zorgan defenses, it wasn't just a flaw in their shields. It was a backdoor, a way to access their systems, to take control of their ships. Lena stared at him, her mind reeling with the implications. "But how did you know?" she asked, her voice filled with awe and gratitude. Zane's smile faded, replaced by a look of sorrow and regret. "Because on one of them, Captain," he said softly. "I'm a Zorgan, a spy sent to infiltrate your crew, to learn your secrets and your weaknesses." The bridge fell silent, the crew staring at Zane in shock and disbelief. But Lena's gaze never wavered, her eyes locked on his. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you help us? Why did you betray your own people?" Zane's eyes filled with tears, his voice trembling with emotion. "Because I saw the truth, Captain," he said, his words ringing with conviction. "I saw the courage, the compassion, the unbreakable spirit of the human race, and I knew that I could not be a part of their destruction, not anymore." He turned to the view screen, his gaze fixed on the retreating Zorgan ships. "I have sent a message to my people, a plea for peace, for understanding. I have shown them the error of their ways, the futility of this war, and I believe that they will listen, that they will choose a different path." Lena felt a surge of hope, a flicker of light in the darkness. She turned to her crew, her eyes shining with pride and gratitude. "You heard him," she said, her voice strong and steady. "We have a chance to end this war, to build a future of peace and cooperation, and we will take it together." The crew nodded, their faces filled with determination and resolve. And as the ship turned towards Earth, towards home, Lena knew that they had found something more precious than victory, more valuable than conquest. They had found hope, the hope of a better tomorrow, the hope of a universe where all beings could live in harmony and understanding. And that hope, that unbreakable spirit, was the true price of peace. As the ship sailed through the stars, Lena looked out at the infinite expanse of space, her heart filled with wonder and awe. The universe was vast and mysterious, filled with dangers and wonders beyond imagining. But as long as the human spirit endured, as long as hope remained, she knew that they would never be alone. As the human ship approached Earth, Lena couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and wonder. The blue and green planet, once a distant memory, now filled the view screen, a beacon of hope and renewal. The past few months had been a whirlwind of change and discovery. With the Zorgans' retreat and Zane's revelations, the war had come to an abrupt end. The human colonies, once scattered and isolated, had begun to reunite, to rebuild, to forge a new future together. But the road to peace was not without its challenges. The scars of the war ran deep, and many still harbored mistrust and resentment towards the Zorgans. Lena knew that it would take time, patience, and understanding to heal the wounds of the past. As the ship entered Earth's atmosphere, Lena turned to her crew, her eyes filled with pride and gratitude. "We did it," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We found a way to end the war, to bring hope to our people, and we couldn't have done it without each and every one of you." Grayson, Ava, and Zane smiled back at her, their faces filled with the same sense of accomplishment and relief. They had been through so much together, had faced impossible odds, and emerged stronger, more united than ever. As the ship touched down on the surface of Earth, Lena felt a rush of emotion wash over her. She stepped out onto the soil of her homeworld, breathing in the sweet, clean air. Around her, the crew disembarked, their faces filled with wonder and joy. In the distance, Lena could see the beginnings of a new settlement, a gleaming city rising from the ashes of the old world, and beyond that, the stars, the infinite expanse of the universe, filled with endless possibilities. She thought of the sacrifices that had been made, the lives that had been lost in the pursuit of peace, but she also thought of the bonds that had been forged, the friendships that had been created in the crucible of war, and she knew that those bonds, that sense of unity and purpose, would be the foundation of a brighter future. As the crew began to disperse, to reunite with loved ones and start new lives, Lena felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Zane, his eyes filled with warmth and affection. "What will you do now?" he asked, his voice soft and gentle. "Will you return to the stars to explore new worlds and new frontiers?" Lena smiled, her gaze turning towards the horizon. "No," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "My place is here on Earth, helping to rebuild what was lost. There is still so much work to be done, so much healing to be achieved, and I want to be a part of that, to help create a world where all beings can live in peace and harmony." Zane nodded, his eyes shining with understanding. "And I will be by your side," he said, his voice filled with promise. "Together we will build a new future, a better future for all of us." Lena felt a surge of hope, a sense of purpose that filled her entire being. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be challenges and obstacles to overcome. But she also knew that with the support of her crew, with the strength of the human spirit, anything was possible. As the sun began to set over the horizon, Lena looked out at the world before her, a world filled with promise and potential. The price of peace had been high, but the reward, the chance to create a better tomorrow, was worth every sacrifice. And as she stood there, surrounded by the people she loved, the people she had fought for, Lena knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The stars might call to her, might beckon her to explore new worlds and new adventures. But for now, her place was on Earth, helping to build a future that all beings could be proud of. With a smile on her face and hope in her heart, Lena turned towards the setting sun, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The war might be over, but the journey, the quest for a better tomorrow, had only just begun.